Before any keyboard warriors get on my case, no, the title of this video is not clickbait. I mean every word when I say, do not see Tenet in the theater. However, there is a very particular reason for me saying this which goes beyond the simple assumption some of you might make. Allow me to share what that would be, and for that, I'll need to talk about my boy Christopher Nolan. In general, I have adored this man's body of work. The only film of his I haven't seen is his remake of Insomnia, but I have a positive opinion on everything else he's made. Following is a very interesting debut. Memento makes a surprisingly strong case that you can literally tell a story backwards. The Prestige is a deeply fascinating tale of rival magicians, and Interstellar may have its logical and storytelling issues, but it's hard to deny that the experience Christopher Nolan gave us with that movie is an admirable attempt to draw upon 2001's influence. And then we get to the big boys like Dunkirk, a fresh and unconventional take on the highly homogenized World War II story, which ended up being my second favorite film of 2017. The Dark Knight trilogy ends in a somewhat rocky way with the third installment, but it's still probably one of the best and most consistent series of Hollywood blockbusters we have. And then there is his magnum opus Inception, which I would confidently include among my 10 favorite films ever. Nolan's filmography is creative, diverse, and exciting to both watch and discuss, but there are a couple of things that have remained consistent for him, most especially in the films he has made in the past 10 years. 1. Having fun with time, and 2. Really loud noises. That second part is what I wish to focus on for now, because it relates to the reason why I even made this video in the first place. Sometimes, Nolan's uses of loud sounds and music are quite effective. Inception is probably one of the best examples, for Hans Zimmer's euphoric score always complements the intense action, while the actual cacophony of gunfire, explosions, and other sorts of rumblings also contribute to the film's epic blockbuster tone. Thankfully though, all of these noises never got in the way of the story, for dialogue is always enunciated clearly and is mixed well with the rest of the sounds. Dunkirk is another great one, for even though it can sometimes be difficult to hear what the characters are saying, whether or not that may be because soldiers are bottled up in a stranded boat, RAF fighter pilots are talking through their premature radio technology, and other British soldiers trying to get to safety when German fighters come swooping in, there's purpose in depicting things this way. The sounds are oppressive in Dunkirk, yes, but that's the exact point of the movie. Nolan's intent was to help the audience empathize with these soldiers who endured extreme emotional trauma on that awful beach, and the sound mix was integral to this since the intensity of everything heard and sensed during the film is his way of showing how terrifying World War II was, instead of resorting to extreme gore like Mel Gibson's Hacksaw Ridge did. But then there was The Dark Knight Rises, which is a good movie in my opinion, but one that has a slight problem with its sound mix. More specifically, it's kind of difficult to make out what Bane says from time to time. Granted, his dialogue is pretty easy to follow for the most part, considering that his character is a man of both action and words. Since Tom Hardy's Bane was wearing a mask though, that verbose dialogue occasionally gets warbled up, so watching the movie with subtitles is admittedly a better way to experience the story. With that being said, I would make the same argument for Tenet, except I think watching that movie with subtitles is the only way someone should experience it. Of all the movies Christopher Nolan has made, Tenet is the worst offender in terms of sound mixing. While it may be a visually dazzling film to behold on a big screen, especially since this is the first huge tentpole film to release in 2020, and we've all been craving a big movie to feast our eyes on, anyone who's really wanting to understand what they're seeing here will be at a major disadvantage when sitting in a theater. Who knows, that might not be the case for everyone, but I was doing my best to pay attention to as many visual and story details as I could, and for the life of me, I could not fully understand what Nolan was trying to tell me. I literally couldn't hear at least 50% of the dialogue due to how poorly it was mixed with the sound effects and musical score. For a movie that's heavily reliant on plot and barely has any sincere character building scenes, this was a huge issue for me. To illustrate what this was like, imagine that you're a worker on a construction site. You need to tell one of your coworkers something important, but they're operating an obnoxiously noisy jackhammer. They're not at any sort of stopping point with the work they're doing, but you still need to share this very important information. So you walk up to them with the full noise of the jackhammer flooding your senses and start yelling at them to get their attention. After going back and forth with yelling and then finally saying what, you might be able to get the information across, but there's a nagging sense of ringing noises going through your head after enduring the horrendous noise of the jackhammer and other tools miles on the construction site. Even if you did manage to get anything through to your coworker, they might not have heard everything you tried to say. Do you get the point I'm making here? This is what it was like for me to watch Tenet the other day. A couple of the Roundtable boys and I went to the Fat Cat's Mesa, a cinema that just barely opened this past November, so this sound system wasn't cheap, outdated technology. These were state-of-the-art speakers, and that was proven by the fact that the combination of Ludwig Göransson's amazing musical score and the pulse-pounding sounds shook my body as it sat down in a comfortable leather recliner. But no matter how impressive the film looked and sounded, I was in a near constant state of frustration since the dialogue was often drowned in a sea of booming noise. Because of that, I don't want to make any sort of attempt to make sense of this story. As the credits began rolling, I walked out of the theater feeling as though I was just missing a lot of critical information. Movies like The Prestige, Inception, and Interstellar were certainly mind-benders, but at least I felt like I was provided with the means to make sense of what I saw. To be quite honest, even if Tenet's plot makes sense, I wouldn't know it until I get to watch it at home on 4K Blu-ray. And that's what I ultimately recommend to you as well. Just wait until the opportunity to watch at home comes up, because at that point, you'd likely get a better grip of the story instead of getting overwhelmed by sights and sounds. But if you still want to see it in a theater though, I won't hold that against you whatsoever. I know that we are still in the midst of a troubling global pandemic, but certain theater chains have good preventative measures in place, so I think it is possible to see movies and still be safe. That's not the issue I'm arguing here. What I am arguing is that because Tenet is such an absurd mess of sound mixing, it's not worth taking that risk in a theater. You might be hungry for a massive blockbuster type of experience, and you will certainly get that, but likely at the expense of being able to properly comprehend everything. So with that, that is why I suggest that you do not see Tenet in a theater.